Buenos días a todos, ¿me escuchan? Bueno, muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia. Vamos a dar inicio a esta sesión del Innovation Competition por el tercer año consecutivo, que estamos súper emocionados de tener pues al equipo del Dr. Richardson y a todos los estudiantes acá. Realmente para CINDE es un honor contar con esta capacitación de altísimo nivel, ¿verdad? Que impacta la vida de estudiantes de diferentes ingenierías y de diferentes universidades. Estamos muy contentos de ver a los familiares acá también que vienen a darles apoyo y pues por supuesto a los representantes de las empresas y de la academia que van a apoyarnos con parte de ser el jurado de estos proyectos. Nuevamente pues les damos la bienvenida, vamos a tener las sesiones de presentación y posteriormente un coffee break para que nos puedan acompañar y conocer a los muchachos y bueno, los dejamos con el Dr. Richardson que les va a explicar un poco la dinámica de estos 4 días de capacitación. Gracias.
Thank you, Diana. So it's my pleasure to introduce the students today. Briefly, I wanted to discuss the agenda for this morning's event. So we're going to start off with a description of the course. That'll take a few minutes, and then we'll go straight into the student presentations. We have 8 student presentations. As I'll explain, something unique about these presentations this year is that a group of master's students from the Tech and the Rice students found these projects working in hospitals over the course of the last week, and then they brought them here to this course and worked with the students that you'll see in order to create some novel solutions. Then we'll have a short break to mingle and to share some feedback with students. We're going to ask you to hold off on questions until that time. And then we have, as we like to do at Rice, a competition of sorts, just for fun. We've asked our judges, our experts in academia, medicine, and industry to give some feedback on the student presentations, and we'll share a brief award, and then finally, and most importantly, we'll be giving out the certificates of completion to the students, and we'll all come up here and take a final picture and finish up the course. It's been an intense week. I will briefly describe what we've been through. So the purpose of the course is to introduce engineers to product development and to prepare them for careers in the medical device industry. This is an introductory course. So we have students from chemical engineering, industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, from many different backgrounds that take this course in order to get introduced to the process of product development in the medical device arena. This is an outline of the course content. So as you can see, it was really just 4 days of learning, and here we are on Monday. Students finalized their presentations in the last hour, and we're having our innovation showcase. So I want to briefly go through what the students did with their projects. So we brought in the ideas from the hospitals that both the Tech students and the Rice students worked together to find, and we learned a lot about the disease that they were trying to treat, and then we did a very simple market analysis on these ideas. On Thursday, Dr. Matthew Wettergreen, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, he presented how to generate concepts and how to select concepts. So we did quite a bit of Pew matrices, brainstorming, things that most engineers are well aware of. On Friday, we worked on low-fidelity prototypes. Now, I'll mention now, you're going to see prototypes that are made from popsicle sticks, from pom-poms, from all sorts of very rudimentary materials. But the purpose of that is to teach students how to think about their projects and convey the ideas behind their projects without having to go and pay someone to do an expensive CNC lathe operation or to spend a lot of money and time doing it. So what we teach in this course is how to very quickly prototype and how to convey the information that's behind your idea. Then we also discussed intellectual property, manufacturing, and quality. So our students will talk a little bit about kind of an introduction to how they would approach IP and quality and manufacturing for their product. And then Saturday was spent talking about presentation styles. So the presentations you'll see, the students worked on those quite hard. We talked a lot about how to position yourself, how to speak loudly, and that's a big part of what we believe is important at Rice, to be able to have engineers explain their ideas clearly and articulately. And here we are today on Monday. So throughout all this, they've been working on their projects. which again were taken from hospitals here in Costa Rica, and I think you'll enjoy them. So we'll move right into the student presentations. We've asked our judges, as I already explained, we're going to hold off on questions until the end of the presentations. Judges, you already have your ballots. We're asking you to score from 1 to 5 each team, and think about the job that they did on describing the unmet need, the solution to their need, and then the aspects of manufacturing, quality, and intellectual property. Don't necessarily think about how big the financial opportunity is. You're going to see some market sizes that are rather small here in Costa Rica. They're not hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're important, and we encourage you to think about how well the students did in coming up with a solution and in presenting that solution. So with that, we are going to invite up our first team, LidoCare, and we'll get the ball rolling. So I'll introduce, this is Team LidoCare, Jasmine Gomez, Carolina Quiros, and Anna Toner.
Thank you. Buenos dias and good morning. Today we are proposing a solution addressing the administration of lidocaine before a bronchoscopy procedure. Now let me begin with this. Bronchoscopy procedures are not fun. They typically involve someone who has a severe respiratory issue, such as chronic asthma or cystic fibrosis. To begin a bronchoscopy procedure, a doctor will insert a small tube called an endoscope through the nose, down the throat, and into the lungs to explore various parts of the respiratory pathway. But I've left out one key item, and that is lidocaine. Lidocaine is a topical anesthetic used to numb the back of the throat. The nurse will spray this 9 to 10 times in the back of the throat to numb the gag reflex. This is done so that when the doctor inserts the endoscope through the nose and down the throat, the gag reflex is numbed and the endoscope will not move, providing control for the doctor to do his or her job. When I noticed this observation, I saw that the nurse sprayed several times to get into the back of the throat, using a very rudimentary spray bottle, like glasses cleaner. And lots of the medicine fell on the back of the tongue, and it tasted rather bitter, very disgusting. I noticed severe patient discomfort, a waste of time, and the possible waste of the lidocaine medicine. Aside from the spray bottle, there is another device on the market called the laryngeal jet. It is like a snake that enters through the mouth. It is rather invasive, and it has a tube that enters through the throat and has several holes punched in it to spray the lidocaine in that manner. How many people are affected by this bronchoscopy procedure? It is estimated that about 5,000 people in Costa Rica have a respiratory illness that needs hospitalization. It is also noted that the lidocaine used for one patient costs about $2.18. Based on the needs for comfort, time, and the waste of medicine, we believe that the nurse will, the payers, whether it's the caja or the patient, will pay about $8 per use, with a total adjustable market of $40,000. In summary, our prototype must address the need for lidocaine to be effectively sprayed in the back of the throat before a bronchoscopy in a way to increase patient comfort.
Well, to design our device, we took into account 3 different things. The first one was efficiency. Right now, as Anna said, they use multiple applications to spray the lidocaine. They spray 10 to 9 times depending on the patient. So we want to do 3 applications or less. Also, the time that they use during the process are 15 seconds plus the pauses they do because the patient needs to recover of the disgusting flavor of the lidocaine. And also, we need to cover all the area of the nerve gag reflex that is about 4.8 to 6.4 centimeters square. With that in mind, we made our objectives that are comfort. So with comfort, we refer to minimize the lidocaine tongue interaction and also invasiveness. We don't want the device to touch the mouth or go through the pharynx. And with that, we made different ideas to solve the problem, and we evaluated them with seven different aspects. The first one was the taste. The patient don't need to taste the lidocaine. So we wanted to stop that to make that process more efficient and faster. Also the time, we want to reduce that. Time now is around 15 seconds, so we want less than that. Also the invasiveness, there are some devices that go through the pharynx or touch the mouth, so we wanted to do it like really comfortable to the patient, that it don't touch anything inside. Also the coverage, we need to cover all the nerve gag reflex area, and the efficiency that we can do it in less than 3 applications. With that, we choose 3 different options. And we made this. These are our prototypes. The first one is a pump with a square head that lets a large coverage of the pharynx area. The second one is almost the same, but with a quarter of a circle head to be comfortable inside the mouth. And the third one is basically a syringe with a head and a neck that the head is a ball with hose that lets spray all the nerve gag reflex area. And it is designed for the anatomy of that. And the fourth of F is a shorter version of the larynge object that Anna mentioned before. Well, that was our final prototype. In the last slide, it was F. There is a syringe and a head and a neck. The head and the neck will be ensembled together, and we can see there that is how the head is supposed to be. It is because we want an anatomical accuracy to avoid the tongue. The back of the tongue is the part that tastes the bitterness, so with that shape, we avoid to spray the tongue, and we can spray all the area we need in less than 3 applications. And also that video, it just played, explains how it will be used. Here we see that the device goes inside the mouth but don't touch anything. So it is to don't make it invasive. Also, it is a single hand use, and it is really simple to manufacture.
So our labor, burden, and materials cost analysis through a total cost of 96 cents for each unit. This cost includes the plastic material from the head and neck piece, and also the syringe. We thought about an intelligent manufacturing design, so we decided to attach the neck to the head. The syringe is not going to be manufactured. It can be obtained very cheap from a supplier. We also searched about similar patents, and we found 3, A, B, and C. They are similar in function, but they work under different mechanisms. For example, A and B work with electricity. They are transdermal, so they work from the outside of the neck, while C is a sprayed nozzle that is very invasive. Also, the idea of attaching the neck to the head was not intended only for a manufacturing purpose, but it is also to attack a risk that we found in our failure mode and effect analysis. It was that during the procedure, the head can fall into the person's mouth, and it could cause even death, but actually it's a very low risk. So we attach those two items to decrease that risk. So, in conclusion, our proposed device is cheap to manufacture. It is a single-hand use. It decreases the waste of lidocaine during the procedure, and it increases comfort. So, simple, sufficient, and satisfying. Thank you.
Thank you, Team LidoCare. Thank you. All right, next up we have Team Breathtakers. So if they could come on down. So Team Breathtakers, or Teddy Air, as they'll explain, is made of Tasha, Abafadal, excuse me, Fiorella, Sebastian, and Daniela.
Thank you. All right. Good morning and buenos dias. As Dr. Richardson said, my name is Tasha, and we'll be introducing a new device concerning the reduction of inhalation of pollution particulates. Our story is rooted in the hospital observations and conversations with physicians throughout Costa Rica. One problem that stood out to me the most was a problem concerning pollution expressed by Dr. Fonseca. Pollution is a problem that affects individuals worldwide and causes a series of cardiovascular and respiratory problems. Specifically, we chose to focus on the effect of pollution on children with asthma. Pollution is made up of particulate matters, specifically a size of 2.5 microns, and can act as a trigger for children with asthma. Typically, if a child has an asthmatic attack, they will need to resort to inhalers, face masks, or medications. Currently, 28% of children in Costa Rica have asthma. That's nearly 1/3 of the population size of children. The Central Valley in Costa Rica is only becoming more populated and more polluted, and this begs for the need for new opportunities and solutions to be surfaced. As I mentioned before, 28% of children have asthma in Costa Rica. That leaves us with a population size of 112,000 children in Costa Rica, ranging from ages 5 to 9. This gives us a total adjustable market of $6 million, taking into consideration that children will need one new inhaler every month, costing $16 a month and $192 a year.
Based on this market analysis, this is the need that we identify. Design a way to reduce the inhalation of pollution particulates in asthmatic children to minimize the aggravation and maintain the healthy lungs. To achieve this, we established or designed criteria based on functionality, filter pore size, and safety. In other words, we are looking for a device that can filter particulates in the air between 2 and 2.5 micrometers. And in order to have a device that also is a toy for kids use under the age of 12, it must pass through a process to obtain the children's product certificate. Also, it must weigh under 1 kilogram, last between 4 and 6 months, and all the hard surfaces should be protected to achieve with our objectives. So we start a process of brainstorming and discussion, and here we can see some of our ideas. The first one is a nasal spray that you can spray in the nose of the children, and it attracts the particulate matter. The second one is a head and face accessories that work as a filter, a stuffed animal filter, and also insertable nose filters, and an implantable trachea filter that the kids can't manipulate at all.
So, as Sebastian just said, we had a lot of ideas during our brainstorming, but we needed to narrow them down to choose one. So first of all, we took out all the ones that were unrealistic or unpractical, and then we evaluated 6 of them through this Pew Matrix. A Pew Matrix allows us to compare our solutions to our design criteria and to rate them as if they're better, equal, or worse than a standard solution that we chose. So as you can see on the screen, the one solution that got the better score was the stuffed animal portable filter. But also during our analysis, we could see that there were beneficial characteristics from other solutions that we wanted to incorporate in our prototype. So, without further delay, we're very proud to introduce to you the teddy bear. There you can see it alive and in color, and in the screen in a bigger size. On the front, it has a filter which filters particulate matter. It has lights that indicate particle level. So if the light is green, it means that the particulate levels are all right. If the light is yellow, it means that the child must turn on the filter. And if the light is red, the teddy bear comes with a teddy bear mask, which the kid has to wear in case of high levels of particulates. His colorful nose is the sensor which detects the particle matter levels. On the back, he has a fan which is in charge of taking the airflow and making it pass through the filter, and it also has a charging port to be able to charge the teddy bear. It has a battery level indicator in the way of a light. On his hand, he has the on and off button. And we decided to incorporate an app that goes with the sensor so that parents will be able to see in real time the particle level measures. They're going to be able to contact us in case they have any doubts. They're going to see, well, the actual measurements throughout a desired period of time with statistics. And they're also going to get alerts about if the battery needs to be changed or the filter needs to be changed. So once we had our prototype, we used this labor burden and materials matrix to determine the approximate cost of actually manufacturing our device. We divided it into 4 parts. The first one is to assemble the stuffed animal, which has a cost of $12. Then assemble the filter and the fan, which costs $24. Then the assembly of the sensor and all the electronics, which costs $43. And finally, the assembly of the 3 parts, which costs $6.40, for a final manufacturing cost of $85.40, taking into account a burden labor rate of $18 per hour.
So keeping in mind all the different parts in our device that needs to be assembled, we did a research about the intellectual property behind it that might interfere with our work. We kept with 2 levels, a medium risk one and a low risk one. L filters have been patented since late 1960s. They are all expired. But on the other hand, the methods to integrate interactive toys and connect them to smartphones, to TVs, and to the cloud, there are a 3-year way for this patent to expire, which is basically the same amount of time that will take us to develop and to test our device. That's why we rated medium risk. Also, analyzing the failure risk, we came with 3 different factors that might affect the function of our teddy bear. In a case of a low battery, we came with a mitigation plan of an alarm that indicates when the battery is under 20%. This will alert the kid and also the person around him that the battery is going down, and also it will send an alarm to the app. If the sensor does not detect the particle matter, we think that this is upon completion of quality and acceptance review. We will do the proper testing about the particle sensor, and also we will include a preventive maintenance plans into the app and also into the main manual. Last but not least, if the clear air delivery rate is inadequate, this will interfere with the main purpose of our filter. So we will include the proper instructions for the child and also for the parent about how close the device needs to be for this to be a boy. In conclusion, we know that the teddy bear provides a fun, cozy, and effective way to solve the problem of asthmatic problems due to pollution. Also, we know that teddy air will become the children's and parents' best friend and minimizing the aggravation of asthma. And what is more important for us is that teddy air integrates the benefits of a family toy, an air purifier, and an air quality motor into an innovative and effective concept that can be used by the children and by the parents as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have slop hands come up next. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Sloth Hands, Eric Dickerman, Luisa Quesada, Agustin Viquez, and Chandler Wu.
Good morning. We are Sloth Hands, and we are about to show you an improved method for washing your hands. Let's imagine this room is full of doctors and nurses. We all know and we all hope that all of them washes their hands properly before performing a procedure or a surgery. In reality, if all of us were clinical personnel, only, let's say, that group will wash their hands properly, and the rest of us won't. Because of that, 1 out of 25 people around the world get infected when they get in a hospital, and around 1.4 million cases of infections are reported worldwide. The reasons why clinicians don't wash their hands are because it takes too long, even it's a 1 minute length, but many people consider it's a lot of time. They are unaware of the impact of not washing their hands properly. And it's inconvenient. Maybe the facility layout is not well designed. The sink is too far from the sink or the hand dryer machine. In Costa Rica, around 10,000 patients get infected every year in hospitals. This costs the Costa Rican hospital to treatment around 100 million. And why is so much money? It's because treating patients that get infected in a hospital, it's really expensive. Its cost of treating range from $2,000 to $12,000 to treat them. The issues that we identify are low compliance. They don't want to wash their hands because it's time consuming. It takes too much time. Their hands end up wet before putting the gloves for a procedure or a surgery. And inadequate education. Some of them are not aware of the impact of not washing their hands properly. Being all said, our team has developed a method to reduce time between washing and drying hands for doctor and clinician in order to improve the compliance and reduce the patient infection.
So, how are we going to achieve this? First, we decided upon our design criteria. Our main constraints are that we want our solutions to be quicker than the norm and to effectively disinfect hands. So normally, doctors wash their hands for less than 20 seconds, and it has proven to be ineffective. We want our solution to last less than 20 seconds in washing and drying. Then we want it to be effectively disinfectant, so we want to kill more than 99.9% of bacteria. Our main objective is to increase compliance. We want to reach values of 80% or more in compliance in hospitals. Throughout our brainstorm process, we came up with 60 different solutions to address our needs. First, we have the chemical washing. So we thought about ideas of products that would allow us to have a better soap or better hand sanitizer. Then we considered mechanical washing. So this would be an automated system that would allow you to wash your hands and dry them in the same place, thus reducing user input. We thought about drying hands. Doctors complain that if their hands aren't dry enough, they can't put their gloves on properly. And lastly, we thought about monitoring bacteria and compliance. So we then reduced our solutions to 5 concepts. This is an automatic hand washing, a sink attachment, wristband tracking, dye marking gloves, and a portable washing station. We scored our concepts against our design criteria and also considered cost and hospital resources such as water and soap. That's how we ranked our concepts, and you can see on the screen our ranking. You might wonder why we didn't pick our top 2 solutions. This is because we realized there were 2 main problems in hospitals. People don't wash their hands before procedures and even more after procedures. So we chose 2 concepts that would allow us to address both of these issues. This would be the automatic hand washing, so everyone here knows what a car wash is. This would be a system that models this car wash and would allow you to put your hands in and be done with your washing. And the dye marking gloves that would allow us to increase compliance after performing a procedure. We kept in mind a wristband tracking to be able to track compliance and thus increase the compliance in hospitals to washing their hands.
So, as Luisa mentioned, we developed 2 functional prototypes during our time this past week. Namely, the one to the left focuses on the car wash system, where you're able to insert your hands into this system, as seen on the bottom left photo, and these brushes will rotate at a faster rate with more bristles and a higher density of bristles to more actively retrieve every part of that hand and gather to more effectively retrieve and get rid of the bacteria in your hands. We mentioned that this is for before the patient, since it's also as important to focus on after the patient as well. And as you can see, what we implemented is through the current latex gloves, we can implement some form of a colorful dye that once you remove the gloves, it sort of sits on your hand and requires the doctor or the clinician to go back and wash their hands again, or else they run the risk of walking around with, for example, pink hands all day. More specifically on the car washing device, hand washing device, these focuses on main aspects such as the brushes, as you can see by the colorful pom-poms over there, with an actuation that is set up when you insert your hands into this system. We also implement a water and soap mixture, which reduces the time of a clinician going and washing their hands, grabbing the soap, and going back to the sink. Then we also can implement future technologies that are currently on the market, such as air drying and tracking monitorization, to both increase the compliance and reduce further steps for a clinician to get their hands prepared for any procedure. Currently, our hand washing solution focuses on 2 different markets. Namely, the hand washing device will cost, after manufacturing, approximately $1,200 to implement all of the previous steps that we determined, such as hand washing with soap and water, the effective hand washing along with drying and tracking implementation. On the other hand, the gloves that we mentioned are also disposable, which is why it's a reduced cost over time. However, it's important to notice that because of our system, it not only affects the rate with which people can, the reduction in time that clinicians can wash their hands, it also attacks several other markets, such as the reduction in hospital-acquired infection for the patient, as well as the time required for the doctor to go treat those patients once they've been infected. It also reduces the total amount of resources used, as well as increases the compliance due to the tracking. Now, using these systems, we also considered an analysis of how much money a hospital could save as a result of our device. So further research and using Hospital Mexico as one of the examples, we used the current numbers and determined that a hospital using our system could save up to $3 million per year with our device, simply if they reduce the infection rate by more than 50%.
As far as our intellectual property strategy goes, there are several patents in the field, both for hand washing and drying technologies that are automated, and medical gloves with antimicrobial agents or dyeing agents on the inside. However, several of these are already expired. Therefore, we determined that there is a medium IP risk for entering, specifically because there are no barriers to entry for other competitors in the market. As far as the risk analysis goes, our biggest problem is incomplete sanitation, because our system would be pointless if we don't achieve complete sanitation. To ameliorate this, we would have stronger brushes and a bigger density to make sure that we reach all of the hands and have it work faster than traditional hand scrubbing in order to reduce the time. Doctors would report that abrasion of hands was a significant problem for them. Their hands were sore or red after too much scrubbing, so that was a disincentive for them to properly hand wash. So we would also address this because it is a small risk. Finally, because it's a machine instead of hands against hands, there is a risk of contamination of the machine in between use. So to address this, we can use UV light to sterilize the equipment and have an automated rinse cycle implemented in the machine. The problem with compliance is getting people to do it on their own without somebody monitoring them. So in that respect, incentives work better than restrictions. So by reducing hand wash time, we will encourage physicians to wash their hands more often, and with the use of the gloves, they will have a psychological component of self-tracking to remind them that they need to wash their hands after a procedure. Therefore, we improve upon the current system of compliance education that normally does not go above 50% compliance when hospitals have people reminding and monitoring people to wash their hands by doing compliance tracking and hand wash reduction time. With this, we hope to promote hand washing in order to reduce infection and increase patient protection. The big thing to keep in mind with our system is not that we are protecting one patient or one doctor from bringing back a disease home. It is that we are protecting an entire system, because by reducing the patient infections, we are improving the lives of lots of people, avoiding lots of infections, and in general, benefiting our society. Thank you.
Thank you. So Rice and Beans is, the team is made of Sebastian, Ryan, and Gabriel.
Thank you. The product we are going to introduce to you today is a way to control posture with patients, for patients with cerebral palsy. A week ago, a colleague of mine visited a high school in Terezu and met a boy with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is patients with cerebral palsy are unable to control their movement very well and are sometimes restrained to a wheelchair. The boy that my colleague met was prescribed a back support made of foam, but unfortunately did not use it because it was uncomfortable for him, and instead used a pillow. As you can see in the picture, he is unable to, he sits in a position that does not support proper spinal posture. Patients with cerebral palsy, or for patients with cerebral palsy, it is very important to maintain proper spinal posture, as this is the foundation for them to begin regaining support, begin maximizing muscular function. So this was a significant need that this patient was not able to meet, and the problem that we addressed in our design. Next, we looked who else might benefit from the solution. This is an isolated incident, but we began to widen our gaze, and we found that there are 13 million people around the world who have cerebral palsy, who are restrained to a wheelchair, and are in remote enough locations such that technologies that would normally be able to provide posture control that are comfortable are not available. Next, we approximated that these patients would be willing to spend about $25 for the solution, and approximated the total addressable market for this device to be about $25. We then began to think about what types of things that these customers would want out of a device. First, of course, would be to maintain proper spinal posture and maintain comfort, but also to be durable, have low cost, and be available in these remote locations. So with this information, we decided to move forward with design and address it in this competition, and developed a needs statement to guide our efforts. And so the needs statement we developed was to develop a way to support proper spinal posture for patients with cerebral palsy in remote locations, to rehabilitate muscles needed to maintain proper posture, and to provide comfort. Now, before we began brainstorming and coming up with solutions, we needed to define what a successful solution would look like. So we defined some criteria. I'm going to highlight two of these as an example. First, for proper spinal posture, a good solution, a successful solution would limit the spinal angle of the patient to within plus or minus 10 degrees in both the frontal direction and the lateral direction. And in order to be easy to use and make a device that patients would use, we decided that if you look at the bottom for ease of use, that patient would only require 2 steps to activate the device or to use the device in normal use. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Sebastian, who's going to talk about some of the ideas that we came up with.
Thanks so much, Ryan. So here, once we have all of that design criteria that Ryan was talking about, we took the time to write down all of the ideas we came up with. So that's why you can see it was like ton of them. So some of them were a little bit more suitable to what we were looking for. As you can see, a brace along hips and ribs up to the underarm. Some of them were a little bit crazier, we could say, like amusement park-like device to hold the patient in place. We consider also like redesigning the mold that our patient was already using. So to narrow all the possibilities that we had, we used, as the other teams, the Pew matrix. You can see here, the first one is the standard we use. That means that's the mold the patient is using right now. Next, you can see the rib brace that we actually evaluated with all of the criteria we have developed before. The most, like the top performing ones were the rib brace and the seat belt idea. So the seat belt idea was to keep the patient in place in the chair using actual seat belts as you use them in cars. For the back brace and the inflatable cushions, those were in second place, but it's important to keep in mind the inflatable cushions one. We are going to be back to that one in a minute. So we started developing the low fidelity prototypes. So as you can see here in our first friend here, we were exploring the idea of using those like rib braces and seat belts. In the process of prototyping, we learned a really valuable lesson. We realized that by using belts, we needed to keep or to apply a really big force or strength to the patient to keep the patient in place. So that was not going to be comfortable. We were looking to improve patients' comfortability, we could say. So that's why we had to pivot at that time. It was really important to discover that. We moved into the inflatable cushions one with a mix of the belts, sort of. So we are giving here neck support, rib support, and also back support. The idea of using inflatable devices allows us, let's say that the patient is slouching to one side of the chair, so we can increase the amount of air we have there to move the patient to the other side. Or if the patient needs, let's say, I don't know, like cancer treatment, for example, or specific treatment, X-ray, let's say, we need to keep the patient in a really specific spot. So we can use those inflatable devices or inflatable cushions to keep the patient in place. There is something important as well, that we can, through the shape, allow airflow. One of the problems the patient was having with the mold is that the whole mold is in direct contact with the skin. So giving like a specific shape would allow us to minimize the point of contact with the patient, allow airflow, and provide a really soft surface, we could say. So with this, I'm going to pass it to Gabriel, so he can explain a little bit further on regards the implementation and IP strategy.
Thank you, Sebastian. So, we have our design frozen. Now we need to make the cost evaluation to know if it's going to be affordable and it's going to make a profit. This is a general approach on the manufacturing process, but we focus on 4 steps. The first one is, as you can see here, cutting. There's going to give the material the shape that we want. During optimization, we're going to have the air chambers needed for our device to work, giving the user freedom of use to let them inflate some sections and not others. During the heat press, we're going to have the sealing of the materials, so there are no leaks and the air is contained. And during testing, we're going to make sure, we're going to double check that there are no leaks and that the product is ready to use. Now, to make sure we are not intervening on any patents, we made an intellectual property research. Here, as you can see, in figure number 1 is the first one. that consist on air tubes attached to the lower back of the patient, and they are fixed into place using a belt. And figure number 2, you can see a chair that has been modified using a structure of plates to hold the patient into place. As you can see, none of these devices involves a wheelchair, so we got a plus side on there. And most important, both of them are expired. So by analyzing this, we having a green light to go ahead with our design. Now, our FMEA, or failure mode and effect analysis. This is a very important part of every design because it's letting us to go ahead on any failure that can happen. Our device is cataloged as a low-risk device because there is no real danger on human life in case of failure, and we are highlighting here the most important two. The puncture cushion. This can happen by any sharp objects that will affect the material, and we are offering as a mitigation plan to weigh the cost-benefit of using strong and thick materials to cover our device and avoiding this. And the other failure is misalignment of the device. So this may not be a critical failure, but we are proposing as a mitigation plan the using of high friction straps or strong straps to fix the device in place. So we have proven now that our device is both economically and legally possible. So we are seeing the potential to improve the quality of life of patients suffering from CP. We need to know that these patients, most of them that need these devices, they may not have enough income to buy them. So, and even if they do, these solutions may not be complete solutions because many of them leave behind some factors such as comfort that we are taking into account in our design. So it's by really understanding the real problem of the patient, such as Sebastian said, that we are going to make a good design according to what the needs of the patient are. And we need to have a big perspective of it. It's by using our ingenuity and our creativity to achieve elegant and simple solutions that the problem is completely solved. And it's by following these steps that the true engineering is made. On behalf of my team and I, thank you very much for your attention.
Now I'd like to introduce our fifth team, Team Pocayoke. Nicolette, Nikki Chamberlain, Simone, Susanna, Carly, and Nazareth.
Thank you. So our project is focused on central venous catheterization, more commonly known as central line insertion. And this project came to light after I spoke to a physician at Clinica Biblica that mentioned that he tended to struggle when inserting central lines into his patients. And so we decided to look more into this problem. And we found that over 5 million central lines are inserted in the United States annually for a variety of different reasons. Initially, these central lines were inserted using anatomical landmarks of the patients, but as ultrasound technology developed, physicians began inserting these central lines using ultrasound guidance, which significantly decreased complication rates. But still, up to 9.3% of these central line insertions result in arterial puncture of the patient, which can lead to complications such as blood loss, additional patient care, and in some cases even death. And the reason that this is such a common problem is due to the proximity of the veins and arteries used in this procedure, which you can see in the image here. You can see the subclavian vein here in blue and the subclavian artery in red. And as you notice, when the patient is lying down, the artery lies just below that vein. So as the physician inserts the needle into the vein, if they go even just a little bit too far, they risk puncturing that artery, which becomes a significant problem. So after identifying this problem, we wanted to look into how can we solve it. And we determined that our solution needed to improve the accuracy of inserting these central lines in order to minimize patient harm. We also wanted a solution that would be easy for the physician to use and that would be cost effective, which led us to look into the market surrounding this procedure. And we found that of the 5 million central lines inserted annually, 1% of those results in the physician not only puncturing that artery, but not realizing it and then inserting the catheter into the artery, which causes severe complications for the patient and costs the hospital about $95,000 per failure, which adds up to about $5 million annually for the United States healthcare system. And with all this information, we decided that we wanted to develop a way to efficiently insert central lines in the subclavian vein of patients in order to minimize arterial puncture. And we chose to focus on the subclavian vein because it's associated with increased patient comfort and decreased rate of infection. It's also typically not used with ultrasound guidance because it's difficult for the physician to position the transducer around the clavicle here. And we felt that if we could come up with a solution that eliminated the need for ultrasound altogether, it would provide the greatest net benefit.
Thank you. According with our needs statement, we designed these criteria. So as constraint, we have that our device must comply with the FDA Class 2 regulations. Moreover, as objectives, we have that this device should be easy to use. That means that the physician should be trained in less than 30 minutes. Also, this device should allow the needle to be inserted in less than 2 minutes, and the device should cost less than $4,000. This is because the current solutions that are available as the ultrasound and the central line kit are around of this price. And lastly, we as a team should be able to develop and design this device during this course. So, following our design criteria, we did our brainstorm, and we came out with a round of 30 ideas, starting from oxygen sensors to flexible needles and other strange ideas as mechanisms to protect the artery of injury. We selected of those ideas the 7 potential solutions that we thought that were the more suitable for our problem, and we compared them with the standard recurrent solution that is the ultrasound guided injection. And as we see here, the winning solutions were the camera on the needle, the transducer shape, followed by the syringe positioning system and the pressure sensor. We decided to combine 2 of them, the syringe positioning system and the transducer shape, as both were mechanical. We continue with a scoring matrix in which we assigned a weight to each design criteria, and that was very important because as we see here, we have the camera on the needle, the combined solution that is the syringe positioning system and the transducer shape, and the pressure sensor was the one that resulted to be the best solution to solve the problem that we presented.
Thanks, Nazaret. The next step in our process was to use this solution and create a low-fidelity prototype. So what we have here, there were 2 things that we really liked about the solution that we picked. First of all, it isn't taking away any of the manual control from the doctor, which is really important. And secondly, it's really utilizing solutions that are existing in the healthcare system today. So in our low-fidelity prototype, we're actually representing 2 of those existing systems. We're representing the syringe and needle that is usually used for a central line, and that's connected with a T-connector to a commonly used intra-arterial blood pressure system. And that system essentially uses pressurized saline with a pressure sensor, and what we've changed is the feedback system. Now this feedback system, what it's going to do is to tell the doctor if the placement has been successful in the vein or unsuccessfully placed in the artery. Another key feature of our device is that the feedback system is clippable. And we think it's very important that the doctor shouldn't have to be looking back at a screen while performing the relatively short procedure. So it can be clipped directly onto the non-compressive tubing or removed and placed anywhere close to the patient that's in the line of view. The beauty of our solution is really in its simplicity. So I'd like to walk through exactly how this procedure is going to look if you're the doctor making the injection. We look at the front screen and we're showing the systolic and the diastolic pressures. And nothing else, we have the feedback system as a green light feedback or a red light feedback. Now the concepts that we're using is that the venous pressure is going to be much lower than arterial pressure. And using simple signal processing, we take the average pressure and that allows us to give the proper feedback. So if we follow in the upper left, we have the needle insertion and we have no feedback. As soon as we enter the subclavian vein, we'll receive the positive green light feedback. That means we're good. We should stop inserting the needle. However, if the doctor accidentally punctures and continues through the artery, the red light indicates that we have to mitigate any complications before we can continue with the procedure. And this is also true if the doctor had made the initial injection in the artery as well. So how much is this device going to cost us to produce? Fortunately, we're really only making a simple electronic device. So we have to work with things like printed circuit board materials, simple plastic coating, wiring, and LEDs. So we're expecting the cost of materials to be around $31. And then taking into account a labor cost of $15 per hour, we calculate that to be around $18, expecting a total production cost of $50. Thank you.
For our next slide is intellectual property strategy. We did a wide research and we found that basically there are multiple patents in the web, but that are related to the pressure measurements, and none of these patents had the same application as our design. So you can see in the pictures that they are pretty similar, but none of this has the same application. As you can see, they are expired. For most of the patents that are expired, most of the patents that are expired, we use existing technologies that are often being updated and reinvented. So we consider our design to have medium intellectual property risk, and as a strategy, we think that detail more our limitations of every relevant claim is the best way. As failure mode and defect analysis, we found 5 failure modes, which are 4 of them acceptable and 1 of them undesirable. The 1 of them undesirable is the failure of the IVT connector, which may cause as an effect that the blood may enter into the syringe and into the pressure measure system and give an incorrect measure. As a final conclusion, our device will help physicians efficiently insert the central lines and minimize the arterial puncture, minimizing the failure, but for 1% can save the healthcare system $4 million. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Natalia, Octavio, Callie, and Sofia.
So hello everyone. We are here to present to you our product Vive. But before we begin, I would like to tell you a quick story. When I was a little kid, 12-year-old, I was just running around like any kid does, and then I fell and I hit the ground with my chin. Because of this, I needed 8 stitches. When it came the time to pull these stitches, it was really, really painful. I was screaming the whole time, and it was a really horrible experience. I don't know if anyone here has gone through this. Maybe some hands? Yeah, it really hurts, right? So with all this said, we identified this at Hospital Clínica Bíblica. As I said, it's a painful experience. We found that around 150,000 people are afflicted by this per year, so quite a number, right? Because of this, we came with the idea of making a product that doesn't inflict pain and is easy to use. Here our market size is around, we spend around 740,000, so it's quite a big number. We have around 372 general surgeons and do around 398 surgeries per year. As you see right there, we have the kit. That's the current one, and it costs around $5. So we came with all these ideas, and we decided that our product had to be easy to use, painless, and had a low cost, as I just said. Need of statement, we went with, we have to maximize patient comfort and also reduce the pain.
After analyzing and studying our user needs, we define our design criteria that are the most important aspects to keep in mind toward our product development. First of all, we have the function. Our product has to remove stitches because it's the main function of the product. It has to be painless. How are we going to measure it? We're going to use the criterion of no change on 0 to 10 pain scale for patients before, during, and after the stitch removal. It has to be easy to use. We think in the nurse or the doctor that has to do the process, and we're going to measure it in the amount of steps that the doctor or nurse has to do to remove one stitch. And it has to be low cost. And why is it? Because they threw all the kit after they use it. So the current solution in the market costs around $5, like my partner said before. And we put a criterion that it has to cost less than $5 per kit. And one of our goals to improve and do our product better than the existing one is to be fast. What means to be fast? It has to improve the time of the removal of each suture. So we put a criterion to an average time of removal is no more than 45 seconds per stitch. Based on all our design criterions, we develop a brainstorming. We generate about 60 solutions in total, and we categorize them in improvements to the process and new applications and features that we can add to our product to reduce pain. We work in a Pew matrix. We develop around 10 proposals, but we just choose the best 4 ones that are the needle with a blade, the 2-in-1 tool, the twister fingers, and of course we have the current solution. We compare them to our design criterions and we give them a weight of importance. And the one that has the best score is the needle with the blade, and we start working with it to design and define our final product.
And so once that we have decided which final product to develop, we developed our prototype here because we wanted to make sure that our product would work in practicality as well as in theory. So as you can see, there are 2 main parts of our product. There's the green body, which will be plastic and will house the vibration motor and the batteries. And then there's the purple disposable head. Now I want to zoom in a little bit on the head before I touch on the vibration, because this is the mechanism of cutting the stitch itself. As you can see, there's a blade here that's protected by a hook. That way we don't injure the patient. And this blade, the suture goes in here, and then when you press the green button, this second arm, also made of metal, comes down and clamps on the suture so that the suture is cut. All the while, the device is vibrating to reduce patient pain. The idea of these vibrations is that it overwhelms the nerves so that the nerves can only feel the vibrations and cannot feel the pain. So the whole tip, like I said, is vibrating. And this is a drawing of how it would cut the suture. And here is a video of our product working. As you can see, the nurse would slide it under the stitch, and then once it's under the stitch, they would press the button and have it cut, and then they would keep going down the line and cut all the stitches. As you can see, this is a fairly fast process, and I also want to emphasize that this whole part, again, is vibrating and touching the patient's skin as a way to reduce pain. So how much is our product going to cost? It sounds great, but is it economical? We found that it will cost approximately $10 to produce the entire device, and that includes the tip and the motor and the battery and everything. And then for the disposable head, we come out at about $1. With the profit margins markup, we chose 80% for the device itself to make a profit. And then for the disposable heads, we chose 50%, which makes it about half the cost of the current solution. So you can see our product is much better economically than the current solution, and it still keeps that convenience of a disposable head so that you don't have to re-clean it every time.
Okay, our next step was to do an intellectual property research of existing patents. We found a suture removal instrument and method that has a guarded blade with a sticky suture catcher. The difference between this device and ours is that this device doesn't vibrate or have any other method to reduce pain. This device has a medium IP risk, and the other device that we found is a vibrating razor that the mechanism of vibration is similar to our product, but this device has a low IP risk. So we conclude that our device has a low IP risk. After we did a failure mode and effect analysis, one potential failure that we found is if the nurse cuts the patient. This can be caused by an accident or bad use. This has an undesirable acceptability, and the mitigation plan that we create is the hook at the end of the blade to shield the blade and in that way prevent the cutting part from coming into direct contact with the patient. Another potential failure that we found is if the vibration doesn't work. This can be caused if the battery dies. This is acceptable, and the mitigation plan that we create is a LED that indicates the battery level. So the green color indicates that you have 100% of battery. The yellow color indicates that you have 50% of battery, and the red color indicates that you only have 10% of battery left. Finally, we want to finish our presentation giving you 3 strong highlights of our device. The first one is that the vibration reduces pain, the needle increases precision, and the duality speeds the process. Thank you so much for your attention.
All right, next up we'll have team Do You Even Lift? Excellent. I'd like to introduce Josh, Carlos, and Felipe.
Good morning, everybody. We are Team Do You Even Lift, and our product revolves around a lift assist system. And before I go into that a little further, I want to propose a scenario to you guys. Pretend that you have a child with cerebral palsy. And for those of you who do not know what cerebral palsy is a neuromuscular disorder in your body. It can cause paralysis, sclerosis, and muscular dystrophy. So it's very vital that you would have to transport the patient to and from various locations. So if you are a parent, you would have to lift your child from their wheelchair to a bed or from their wheelchair to the bathroom. And obviously this causes a lot of pressure on the caregiver to not risk injury or have a risk of injury. And so it's vital that we solve this solution. And so a little background on this and some research. There was actually a 13-month study done in Australia, a hospital in Melbourne, that showed that 127 nurses actually had overexertion injuries from lifting patients to and from their wheelchairs. And when we're talking about a hospital system that doesn't have 127 nurses, that's a huge problem. And so we looked into the current solutions on the market, and we saw different options. So we saw mechanical aids, we saw sling systems, and we saw a simple product called the BC board, which requires the patient to sit on a board and transfer themselves over. And if we're talking about a cerebral palsy patient, that's just not a viable solution. And so when we looked at the failures and shortcomings of these products, we saw that they were too expensive. So one mechanical aid that we saw was called a Rift and Tram, and that system actually costs $5,000 US. And for a family who has a cerebral palsy child, that's just way too expensive to have in their home. And so we saw the opportunity to develop a mid-market solution that could essentially accomplish the same thing. And so before I go into the target demographic, we want to show you a statistic on cerebral palsy and how many children are affected by it. So there's currently about 764,000 cerebral palsy children in the US, and about 42% of them are immobilized. That means they require assistance from a primary caregiver. And so that is our targeted demographic, is the primary caregiver, the person doing the lifting. And so we would ask the question of how much would they be willing to pay? And so we looked at the mid-market solution price ranges, and we saw that they're around $200 to $1,000. And so our total addressable market, we determined would be around $180 million US a year. And how we came up with that figure is we took the 300,000 immobilized CP patients and multiplied that by $600 to get a rough estimation of the market. And so we need to ask the question of what does the user need in a machine to transfer a patient from the wheelchair to the bed? They would need it to be comfortable. Obviously it has to be comfortable for the primary caregiver, but it has to be comfortable to the child as well. It has to be child friendly. We are talking about children when we're talking about cerebral palsy. So it has to be non-intimidating. So if they look at a machine and they said, oh, that looks like a medieval device, they're not going to want to use it, right? And it also has to be intuitive. If it's not an easy to use system, they're just not going to use it. It's just how it is and how society works. And so we developed a needs statement. And our needs statement says we need to figure out a way to develop and a way to help caregivers physically lift immobilized cerebral palsy children to and from wheelchairs while mitigating risk of injury to the patient and to the caregiver. And now Carlos is going to talk more about our iterative process.
Thanks, Josh. So regarding the design criteria, we established 5 constraints or objectives that were important for us and for our project. The first one is the most important one, and it established the main functionality of our device. That will be that the device must transport a patient from point A to point B in a certain amount of time. We established that time at 1 minute or less. The second one addresses the weight capacity of our device. It must hold at least 180-pound load without a problem. We are also seeking for a compliance in the hazardous materials regulations, and we are looking for an affordable device. So we are searching a cost between $100 and $1,000. Finally, it should be easy to use because, as Josh said, otherwise no one will buy it. Regarding our brainstorming, we came up with a lot of ideas like hook vest, counterweights, boards. We thought of lift platforms, tripods, bed-add-ons, and others that we eventually combined some of them to make our final concept. But before that, we put all those 10 ideas into a PUC matrix where we evaluated things like design criteria, cost, time, durability, and portability. We came out with 4 finalists that were the swivel hammock, the sphere roller cart, a PLT or patient leaning transfer system, and a bed add-on. The patient leaning transfer system was our main primary point because the concept is already on the market. Regarding the concept selection, we took all those 4 finalists and make a weight matrix for them. The weight matrix multiplies the rating times the weight, the rating being a score from 1 to 5, and the weighting, we focus on the functional durability and the time efficiency. And we also introduced new concepts like the modular and the situational regarding the amount of patient size the device is able to hold and the amount of situations the device is able to stand. Now my friend Felipe is going to talk to you more about the winner, that is the spherical roller that has a score of 3.55.
Thank you, Carlos. Well, let's talk about the prototype. So our life-ready prototype is a spherical roller cart. In the following video, you can see the whole system and how it adjusts to the wheelchair. In the next image, you can see how the wheelchair is inclined so the patient can move easily to the wheel system. In the next, you can see a scissor system that will adjust the height to different bed sizes. And then there is a winch in the back side of the spherical roller cart that will pull up the patient. Then you can see how it's going to work. First, we're going to place a vest to the patient. The winch with the cord is going to make all the work throughout the medical device, and these spherical bearings that you're seeing here are going to allow the patient to move freely in different directions. Well, we decided to develop some CAD models for a precise approach. In our CAD rendering, you can see over here how we're going to place our spherical bearings and how they're going to place the patient in different directions. Also, we can see here the latch system that will adjust the wheelchair to our medical device. So, the question is, how much is going to cost? How much the company has to pay for that? Well, the cost to build is around $941, but I must emphasize that with a bigger industrial production, this price will go down to $500 or $400. And it contains the manufacturing of the wheel system, the roller complex, the wheelchair latch and brake system, and the winch that are pretty expensive. Well, we asked ourselves if another person came with the same idea, so we developed an IP strategy. Well, we found two similar patents, one from China and the other one is from the US. The similar one is a patient transfer card, but I must say that is a medical surveillance system, so it's not that similar. Well, let's jump into the risk analysis. I will clarify that this white line that you're seeing over here is an acceptable risk threshold. That means that the bigger the column is, the less the risk will be. So as you can see, the improper lubrication or clogging of the spheres system is our main problem, but we develop different mitigation plans to reduce the risk for a successful product. So, the conclusions. What can our device offer? Let's see. Versatility. You can move the patient in every direction. You can move the patient in different places, in different hospitals, so it's adaptable. The transport. It transports the patients from point A to point B, easily and in a secure way. Then, it reduces strain. The caregiver will forget that pain that he suffered with other systems that we found, and is ease of use. The system will solve all the problem. So after I finish, I would like to say that our device is not only a roller spin cart, it's not only a device that will solve our problem, it's a device that will place the life quality miles ahead of our patients and the caregivers. Thank you a lot.
So I'd like to introduce Natalia, Joseph, and Sanjana.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to talk about IV catheters insertion. So last week we went to Aurelius Hospital and we realized that a big problem was the IV catheter insertion process and the procedure that nurses were making. And how did we conclude that? Well, there was this nurse that was trying to insert an IV catheter insertion in a geriatric patient, and it was really hard for her. So after three nurses that were trying to insert the catheter and 8 different tries, they were able to successfully insert the IV catheter. So we started to investigate about this situation in Costa Rica. So there is a high failure rate in the current process that we're having in our country. Also,
6 out of 10 IV insertions that they are applying or doing in the country are failing during the first try. Also, there is a procedure time of 57 minutes only to insert the IV catheter, and there is a 39.3 complication rate. So, where is the main problem located, especially in geriatric and pediatric patients that are going through this procedure? So definitely nurses and patients are unsatisfied with the current process. So with this device we're trying to develop, we want to reduce the time that the process is taking, to reduce the attempts that nurses are doing to be able to do the procedure successfully, and to reduce the patient discomfort and pain. So by that, we're going to be able to simplify the process and increase the hospital efficiency. By all this, we did an analysis of the market that we actually have, and there is the analysis or market as addressable of 19.5 million. And we developed a need statement. That need statement says that we need a way for different nurses to be able to perform the procedure in a successful way, to reduce the attempts they are doing to make the procedure final, and also to reduce the pain that patients are having or facing. Based on that, we did a design criteria where you can find constraints and also objectives. The constraints are saying us that we need the puncturing to be deep, but not too deep to go through the vein. Also, we need to localize the vein in the lumen of the vein and comply with FDA regulations. That is really important for all of us. The objectives that we're having for this procedure is that when nurses try to apply, they don't go most of 2 times to be successful in the insertion. Also that the procedure time is at most 10 minutes, and that the training time of the nurses is at most 8 hours to be able to perform the test in the well way. And also, we want the cost of this medical device to be at most $10. Now, we're going to talk about the different brainstorming ideas we developed.
So, with this criteria in mind, we moved forward to brainstorm ideas for how we can solve this problem. So, we identified 2 main parts of the process that we recognize have a huge need to minimize the risk. So, first, there's the localization process of the needle. So, a huge problem that nurses are having right now is, especially in these geriatric and pediatric patients, because the vein is so fragile, it's difficult to insert the needle and not go too deep or not deep enough into the vein. Also, it's important to confirm that the needle is inserted properly. So oftentimes the nurse will think that they have the IV catheter in the right location, but later on down the line there are complications because the needle was injected in the wrong place and damaged surrounding tissue. So our first concept idea was a flexible tip. And the way this would work is once the needle penetrates one wall of the vein, the tip would actually bend to prevent further puncture of the needle vein and keep the tip localized into the lumen. Another idea we had was a color-changing reaction that would occur in the vial where the blood flashes back. So once the needle, like in current technology, once the needle is injected into the vein, the blood flashes back into the vial, and during this process, the color would change depending on whether or not the needle is inserted in the correct location or in an incorrect location. We also considered optimizing the insertion angle of the needle. This is something that nurses are supposed to take into account when they're injecting, especially into patients with fragile veins, but it's often overlooked. So we considered inserting a leveling device that would remind the nurse to insert the needle at a proper angle. We also considered using guide wire technology, similar to what is currently used in a lot of central lines. Basically how this would work is once the needle is inserted, a guide wire ejects to prevent the needle from penetrating further deep and alert the user that the needle is injected in the correct location. We also considered a clickable length mechanism. Similar to a mechanical pencil, how this would work is at the top, the user presses a button which protrudes the needle for a further length. And this gives the user more control over the needle length and would diminish the risk of penetrating too deep. When moving forward after our screening process, we actually decided to combine our guidewire and clickable link technology as we move forward into our scoring matrix. And we chose to do this because after further research, we actually found that guidewire technology similar to the one that we envisioned exists on the market, and we wanted to set our device apart. And we also wanted to increase the scores for this type of technology, which would allow both localization and confirmation of proper insertion. So when going through with our scoring matrix, we weighed each of these solutions against the criteria that we previously described. So the flexible tip scored moderately in both localization and safe insertion. The insertion angle device scored pretty well in localization but very low on confirmation of safe insertion, so it wouldn't solve that problem with the current technology. And the color change on the flip side scored lower in localization but higher in confirmation of safe insertion. Our clicking and guidewire technology scored very high in both localization and serialization, and its scores across all the different criteria were pretty high. So this is the technology that we chose to move forward with prototyping. Our current prototype is shown here. How this works is the user clicks at the top a button, and this causes protrusion of the needle further along into the vein. This allows for better control of the device and would diminish the risk of puncturing too deep. We also combined this with our guidewire technology. So when the needle is inserted into the vein properly, the blood flashes back into the chamber as we described previously. But with our device, what would happen is once that blood is flowing up, it causes the rotation of this rotary arm clockwise. And then that compresses a spring that is in the other compartment of the needle, which causes ejection of the guidewire down through the needle and into the vein. Now, Joseph will take you through other considerations we made with respect to our design.
Well, after all our designs and prototypes, we did a little research about how many dollars we will need to invest in our device. So the conclusion was we just need $2.86. Remember, this is a proxy. Well, right now, I guess some of you guys are thinking, whoa, this is a little more expensive than traditional catheters. So the difference is with our device, users will need less needles to be successful. Well, our IP risk is medium. We found many patterns about traditional catheters, but the difference between this and our device are the clicking button system and the guidewire system for the IB. Well, our potential failure mode are about the needle. So we think our mitigation plan is, first of all, have a good training and be careful with the needle. Well, in conclusion, our device is pretty simple, it's intuitive, but with our product, we can save hospital money, we will reduce surgery time, and we will speed up the waiting list. Thank you very much.